Okay. Hello guys, hello everyone. I'm Luca D'Alberti. Here you can find my Twitter account name and my GitHub link. So a little introduction about me. I'm working on different open source projects, some small projects on my own and some public projects. I'm working actually on multiple private projects, and I'm from Italy, from Rome. Today I'm gonna talk about this topic, and it's Swiftify Everything. So the first question is, what does it mean? So since we moved our development skills to Swift, not anymore to Objective-C, we should start to use Swift, of course, and not anymore Objective-C libraries, as UIKit is, for example. So what I'm gonna talk about is how to use the language feature that Swift provide us, for example, generics that in Objective-C there aren't, and how, using them, we can make the code more readable and more usable for our developers and our team. So I'm gonna explain you how this presentation is going to be. I'm gonna talk about 3 daily problems in our daily life. I'm gonna explain you why I call them problem. I'm gonna explain you how to maybe solve them in a nice solution and a nicely iterated solution. So the first problem is how we usually handle the network completion closure. So I usually see, and I usually use this code to handle my asynchronous operation. I was inserting into the interface of the method the completion parameters, or completion handler, or whatever, that handles to return type. For example, here our to-do array that is optional, and the error instance that it's optional too. So the first question that a developer can do while he's reading your code written in this way is that what are we going to do if both values are nil? Which one has the priority and which not? So what if the both values aren't nil? So if you receive from your API an NS error instance and at the same time an array of to-do, or the reverse. So what we do usually is to implement it in this way. So let's take the first 2 constants as the return type from the return values from the API code. And depending on your application, you choose to check before for the error or before for the value. And if they are both nil, you return something that is like generic error, like that. It's a little bit messy, because if a new developer comes into your team and see this code, has to think about it. Has to think that firstly, the application is giving the priority to the error, that it's not in place. You cannot see it immediately. You have to spend, even if they are 2 seconds or 3 seconds or 5 minutes, it's always a cost for your team. So the goal, and what I want to introduce you, is this form. Like here, I'm using a view model, but we can gather it from it, it doesn't matter. And we could start to handle the connection state instead of your completion handler. The connection state can assume 2 different values. Since it's an enumeration, it can assume 2 different cases. There are loading, and there are completed. The completed is another enumeration as an associated type, that is the completion enumeration that I'm going to explain you. That has 2 cases, fail and success. In this case, we can already handle the error that is typed to NS error, what you want, and the to-do's array that is typed to-do array. It's not any object or whatever. That's what the generics, how the generics help us. And this closure that we pass as parameter in the bind function is called every time that the 2 connection state value is changed. So let's go to the demo. So here I have my project. And the first thing that I want to do is to replace this completion parameter with this completion enumeration. It's quite easy. It accepts one generic parameter that is value, and it is the type of your associated value for the case success. And in case of failed, I put here NS error, but it can be another generic type here. For this example, I'm gonna take the NS error. So once we define this completion enumeration, we can define the connection status enumeration that takes this one to the value type generic parameter that is gonna be written here. And the cases are loading and completed. So we have here a nested enumeration. Here I'm defining to do as an any object type alias for simplicity. And here we have our result. So when you are going to use, when you are going to call your, for example, get to do method, you're going to call it in this way without this completion parameter. This is kind of enable you to asynchronously testing your application. You don't have to wait for the completion handler that has to be getting called. In this method, we are going to set the to-do connection state value as loading because of this enumeration, and whenever the API call is finished, we set the success value or failed value. So, but we are declaring here the to-do's connection state that is a bindable type. It's a new type that it's quite easy to read and quite easy to implement. It's generic, this one over T, and it has a public variable called value, that's the one that we were setting here, and it's type T. And whenever it's set, it calls the fire method. This fire method is only a simple method that calls our listener in the main queue. The listener is the closure that you pass in the bind function parameter. So whenever this to-do connection state value property is set, this closure is called. So whenever you change the value between loading or completed in success or failed, you get this closure code, and that's a way to centralize your code and to not having any error. Like sometimes it happens that you're loading it together, still appearing while the request is already finished, or you have to synchronize some operation, and here you have all centralized, and you have to think about deleting the code from a part and doing it somewhere else. So it's already all here, and you have all strongly typed. So here we have our to-dos that it's a, as you can see, is a type array to do. I don't know if you can see. It's already done by Swift using generics, and it's not caching. It's impossible. So let's go to the other problem, the second one, the Objective-C selector syntax. For me, it's a problem because I'm kind of obsessed by the private. I want to make my selector private, for example. I can't because the selector has to be public somehow. Or you put it public, or you create it private, but with the Objective-C mark of a flag before, because it has to be public for the Objective-C runtime library. So this is our structure when we want to create a button, for example, or any other UI control instance programmatically. We have to add the target, and we have to create another function that handles this event. That splits our code, because as we do usually in Swift, Instead we use closures, of course. So why don't you use closure for this one too? Yeah, our goal would be this one. It's more easy to read, it's shorter too, and it's using closure as Swift does. So let's see how to reach this result. So here is our result. First of all, I will write an extension over UI control. I'm not writing subclass or UI control UI button because then I have to subclass every element. And the extension is useful for this thing. So let's go to the declaration of the bind function. As you can see, it accepts the event type, that is the UI control event, and the closure that is escaping because I'm saving it for future use. I'm saving the closure in a closure wrapper object. This is a kind of workaround because since I'm writing an extension, I can't have stored properties. But I can use Objective-C runtime library for storing associated objects. But since I'm using a Swift closure, I can't store this closure in an Objective-C environment. So I have to store this closure in something that can be bridged into any object instance. So this is our closure wrapper class, that is quite simple. Yeah, and that way I can store it. And whenever I need it, so whenever this triggered action is called, so this function is called, I can call the closure in the closure wrapper object that I have. Still, here I'm using the Objective-C mark, but your closure that you're passing is private. Like, I mean, for your developers, they cannot use it somewhere else because it's private. Still, maybe around time, Objective-C can see it because it can run it, but it's private for your developers, so it can be less messy. So this one is the other. And the last example, last one, is the table view, the list in the table view. So you want to show the list of to-dos, for example. So every cell is the same. The number of cells is the number of rows is the array of to-dos that count. And whenever you have to do this, you always create your UI table view instance through table view controller or UI controller. You convert to data source and delegate protocols. You implement the data source and delegate protocols and reload the table every time the array changes. So let's imagine that you have a to-do list and then you have a examples list and so on. You do it every time you need it and you replicate the code. And this is the result. So here is a UI controller that does only implements the protocols of the UI table view delegate and UI table view data source. It's quite long. And you have to do it every time you want to show a list. So my solution is this one. It's a little bit maybe hard to read the first time, but then you can get used to it. What I'm doing is I'm instantiating a table controller that is only a UI view controller with a table view and full screen. And I'm passing as a generic type two types: the UI table view cell type and the elements that you want to display inside. You can configure it, like if you want to refresh control or not, or whatever. It's still can be some subclasses, or you can configure it as you want. And you set here your data source and delegate. In the cell form model, you build your cell. The closure returns you the cell already instantiated with this type, or executed with this type, so you don't have to cast it to the table cell. And you get the model that is already a to-do object. Here I call a set function on the cell because I implement it, but you can do your UI stuff directly here. And you return the cell, of course. On selection closure is the did select an index path and returns you the index path and the model, so the to-do object that's encapsulated in that cell. And on refresh is called every time the refresh controller has been triggered. So you can do your API stuff. And whenever you want to reload your item review controller, you just set data source. So let's see how I reached this result. So here is the class. Sorry for the comments. Here is the declaration. It accepts two generic parameters, C that stays for cell and D for data source, where C is a reusable view. Reusable view is quite easy. It's a protocol that tells me that this cell can be dequeued by and registered by using a nib. And C, and there are no restrictions for D, so D can be whatever you want. In this case, in our case, it's up to do and can be whatever. Whenever the data source is set, I'm calling the reload data. You can override it with your own data source change closure, or you can let it reload the data normally. And what it does when you reload the data. So I'm not implementing the protocols here because I have another element that is the Swifty table view. That is an object that is a table view object where itself is the delegate of the data source, and it calls these closures to set to build itself. So I'm registering the cell here, and I'm setting the automatic dimension because you can use your auto layout. And here I'm configuring the table view. The table view has to have one section. The number of rows per section should be the data source.count, or 0, but it shouldn't be possible. And the set for index dot does the trick. It checks if the cell for model closure is set from the user. It checks if the model is in the data source at this row. And if everything is good, it executes the cell with another method that I wrote, and it returns the cell builder result, so the cell from model closure result, passing the cell and the model. And on cell selection, that's almost the same thing. So yeah, that's it. And you can see here that it's quite easier. It's quite shorter, and it still can be read and can be used for everything. And you can even subclass it if you want, so you can do whatever you want. So here is the GitHub link for this project. You can download it and clone it if you want. Thank you. That's all.